Our game of hide and seek was more than just a pastime. It was an invitation, a message extended to the ghost, supposedly lingering in the empty house. If the spirit accepted, it would reveal itself to play with us. The more sincerely and earnestly we hid, the greater the chance it would appear. I will never forget that day, July 12, 1998. It was the last summer before our grueling college entrance exams. Desperate to savor the final moments of our high school years, our group of 4 decided to do something wild and memorable. At the time, the movie The Ring, featuring the ghostly Sadako crawling out of a TV, was all the rage. Late on Saturday nights, there was a show called Ghost Stories, where you could see blurry photos of eerie apparitions. Hands, legs, and half faces. These ghostly tales were a hot topic at school, so naturally, our thoughts turned to James. Upon hearing our suggestion, James furrowed his brow and said, "You guys are really bored, aren't you?" James was the oldest and biggest of our group, with a maturity that made him our de facto leader. Most importantly, his family ran a shrine at home, a place where people came nightly to offer incense and seek guidance. His father had been a spirit medium for over a decade, and James, having grown up in such an environment, knew all the spooky taboos. However, he never volunteered this information. We had to beg him just to hear which bathroom stalls at school to avoid because they were haunted. It always sounded like he was trying to scare us, but we ended up avoiding those stalls anyway. "Please, James, take us ghost hunting." Robert, the smallest and most impatient of our group, couldn't contain himself. He hopped up and down, pleading, "Come on, take us to find ghosts." I joined in. "This is our last summer. James, be a sport and show us something exciting." They called me Big Head because, well, my head was large. Convincing James to go along with my great idea seemed impossible, making my head feel even heavier. "Come on, guys, don't be like this," Michael said, wiping the sweat from his forehead. He was overweight, and the summer heat made him look like a melting marshmallow. "If James doesn't want to, let's not force him. We can find something else fun to do. How about a food eating contest? Maybe some chicken wings." He couldn't resist giving a thumbs up at the mention of food. In the end, of course, Michael's timid suggestion didn't stand a chance. Using a poster of a popular actress as a bargaining chip, Robert and I finally convinced James. In those conservative times, teenagers roaming around at night was a big no-no. So we had to wait until our families were asleep, sneaking out by climbing through windows or over walls. By a little after midnight, yawning and pedaling our bikes, we all met up at the eerily quiet and dark school gate. "I'm so sleepy," Michael mumbled, rubbing his drowsy eyes and sucking on a strawberry lollipop, trying to stay awake. "It's weird. It's already 12:10. Where's James?" Robert, impatient as always, paced back and forth. "There he is," I said, pointing towards the corner where James was approaching, a plastic bag dangling from his bike's handlebars. "James, you're the best. You even brought us snacks." Michael grinned widely, but his smile faded when he peeked inside the bag. Instead of the expected chicken wings, there were 4 long white candles, each as thick as a finger. "Candles? Really? Can we eat these?" Michael sniffed the candles desperately, still holding on to hope. "It's time. Let's go," James said, ignoring Michael's disappointed face. He pedaled forward, exuding a seriousness that was unlike his usual carefree self. This added an eerie tension to the night. After about 10 minutes of biking under the dim moonlight, we wound through dark, silent alleys until we reached a large, open field. In the middle stood an old, abandoned 2-story house. The red bricks were weathered and covered in vines, and the ground was littered with broken tiles and splintered wood, creating an atmosphere of desolation unfit for any living being. We parked our bikes and stood before the abandoned house, a chill breeze whispering through the night, hinting at something unsettling. "This place looks really creepy," Michael muttered, rubbing his trembling arms. "Maybe we should just go get some late-night snacks instead." "Is this the haunted house?" Robert asked excitedly. Ignoring Michael's suggestion, James shook his head. "Haunted house. Most of that is just people's imaginations running wild." He pointed at the dilapidated building. "This house has clearly been abandoned for at least 5 years. When a place is neglected like this, covered in vines, it naturally becomes a gathering spot for spirits. And now it's midnight, the hour when the day's energy is at its weakest. We might actually see a ghost in there." Sounds thrilling, I said, trying to sound brave, but James's serious tone was making my stomach churn. Awesome. Let's go, Robert said, moving toward the house, but James grabbed his arm. We've been classmates for nearly 2 years. There's no need to put on a brave face now. You can still back out. I'm asking one last time. Do you really want to go in? James's face was devoid of any humor. It reminded me that, despite rarely discussing the supernatural, his family shrine business made him deeply respectful and cautious about these matters. His solemn expression, full of reverence and fear, was enough to give anyone pause. It felt like an impossible choice. Robert, eager as always, was practically bouncing on his feet, ready to charge in. I was torn. The more serious James became, the more frightened I felt. Yet, the idea of sneaking out in the middle of the night only to turn back at the doorstep seemed cowardly and disappointing. Come on, we don't get chances like this often. Let's go in, I finally decided, urging everyone. Michael hesitated, but then nodded. All right, let's do this, James said, leading the way to the front door of the house. This was far from the wild adventure I had envisioned. What surprised me most was Michael's agreement. Turns out he was more afraid of walking home alone than of ghosts. Dissolving the group now was not an option for him. So, with James pushing open the half-collapsed wooden door, we filed in one by one. Moonlight streamed through the broken windows, casting eerie shadows. Dust floated in the air, and the room was filled with decaying furniture, overturned garbage cans, and cobwebs covering the corners and walls. The ground floor had a single moldy wooden partition, and the redwood staircase leading to the second floor had collapsed, making it inaccessible. There's nothing here, not a single ghost, Robert said, disappointed after inspecting every corner. Everyone take one, James said, his expression still serious as he handed out the white candles from the bag. Each of us got a candle with a small paper disc to catch the dripping wax. He lit them with his lighter, adding 4 small, flickering flames to the dark room. Michael watched the candlelight flicker and sighed. Seeing these candles makes me crave cake. I chuckled awkwardly. Michael, you think about food too much. Let's see if you still have an appetite when we actually see a ghost. Lighting candles will make ghosts appear, Robert frowned, determined not to leave without a ghostly encounter. Let's play hide and seek, James suggested, pausing as we all stared at him in disbelief. This game has different names around the world, but in some places, it's believed to summon spirits. Different rules, but one common element. Someone always plays the ghost. His words sent shivers down our spines. Playing hide and seek in this eerie, decrepit house was terrifying enough. But the idea that this game could actually invite spirits made it even worse. James's calm, logical explanation made it seem chillingly plausible. So we hide and wait for the ghost to find us. Robert's excitement was palpable. James nodded. Exactly. Our hiding is an invitation. If the ghost in this house accepts, it will show itself and play with us. The more sincerely we hide, the better our chances of seeing it. Michael's legs were shaking. But what if the ghost finds us? Will it eat me? I laughed nervously. Don't worry. James must have something for protection. A talisman or a peachwood sword, right? In reality, I was just as scared. James gave a reassuring smile, though his eyes remained serious. I have something to keep us safe. But remember, the goal is to invite, not provoke. Despite his words, fear hung thick in the air. We split up, each clutching our candles, the faint light barely piercing the darkness. Every creak and whisper of wind seemed louder, more sinister. As I crouched behind an old, broken wardrobe, my heart pounded in my chest. The silence was oppressive, every second stretching into eternity. The candle flickered, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. I held my breath, straining to hear anything over the thudding of my heart. Would a ghost really come? And if it did, what then? The fear of the unknown was paralyzing, yet here we were, inviting it in, hoping for a glimpse of something otherworldly. The candle will protect you, James said, his expression deadly serious. As long as you don't blow out your candle, the ghost won't be able to find you. And until the candles are completely extinguished, the game of hide and seek will continue. So remember, no matter what you see, do not reveal yourself and do not blow out your candle, or the consequences will be dire. Well, this game of hide and seek sounds easy and fun, I laughed nervously, though I had little faith in the candle's protection. James gave me a stern look and repeated, "No matter what happens, do not blow out your candle." And so the game began. In the 2 rooms on the first floor, we each found a place to hide. Fortunately, the abandoned house had plenty of old furniture. Even Michael, the largest among us, managed to squeeze under an iron bed, covering himself with old newspapers and cardboard boxes, creating a makeshift hiding spot. I chose a wooden wardrobe. It had a hole at eye level, perfect for peeking out. Before long, everyone was hidden, waiting for the ghost to come. The house fell back into its eerie silence, the kind that makes every little noise seem unnaturally loud. Through the small hole, all I could see was darkness. Occasionally, a breeze would stir the shadows. Without a watch, I had no way to track time except by the diminishing length of my candle. At first, I tried to count the minutes, but soon I lost track, my mind wandering. Now, I could only guess the passage of time by the shrinking candle. The candle had burned down to 2/3 of its original length, and there was still no movement outside the wardrobe. To prevent the flickering light from giving me away, I cupped my hand around the flame. Everyone was hiding with the utmost sincerity, determined to make this ghost hunting expedition a success. From my vantage point, the house seemed truly empty, quiet as a tomb. It felt as though I was the only one playing hide and seek, the others having vanished into thin air. This eerie illusion of solitude, coupled with the timeless void, made it seem as though the world had stopped, leaving only my breathing and the candle's flicker to mark the passage of time. I could feel my heartbeat echoing in the silence, each thud louder than the last. The air grew colder, the shadows longer, and the weight of the unknown pressed down on me. My mind raced with possibilities. What if the ghost really did come? What if it was already here, watching, waiting for the right moment? The fear of the unseen, the anticipation of something lurking just out of sight made every second an eternity. Then, a faint sound, a creak, barely audible, broke the silence. My heart skipped a beat. I strained to see through the tiny hole, my breath caught in my throat. The candle flickered more violently, as if sensing the tension in the air. I reminded myself of James's words, "No matter what happens, don't blow out the candle." But the fear was overwhelming, the urge to flee nearly irresistible. Yet, there was nowhere to run. I was trapped in my hiding spot, waiting for whatever came next, praying that the flickering flame would be enough to keep me safe. It felt like minutes, maybe even years had passed. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, and then I noticed something strange. The candle in my hand seemed to have stopped burning down. It was as if time had paused without me realizing it. Just as I was contemplating this oddity, I heard footsteps outside the wardrobe. My heart leaped into my throat. Peering through the hole, I saw a group of people entering the abandoned house, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. There were 4 of them, about our age. The lone girl in the group looked terrified, her face pale. "You guys are so annoying. Why did you have to bring me here?" she complained, her voice trembling. A tall, dark-skinned boy laughed. "Come on, we're students at Zhongli University. How can we say we've truly been to Zhongli without visiting the haunted house?" Another boy, who looked like a bookish type with black-rimmed glasses, asked David, "Are we really gonna play hide and seek here?" "Of course we are," said the one called David, his back to me so I couldn't see his face, only hear his deep, raspy voice. "This is the ultimate test of courage. Everyone, have a seat." The 3 others followed his lead, sitting down on the dusty floor without a word. It became clear to me. These 4 were university students, just like us, bored during the summer break and looking for some late-night thrills. They came here for their own ghost hunting adventure. I couldn't help but smile at the thought of their reactions if they discovered we were already here. They'd probably run away screaming, but I remembered James's warning. So I stayed perfectly still, my eyes glued to the scene unfolding before me, maintaining my silent vigil inside the wardrobe. The group settled into a circle, and David began to speak. "All right, let's start the game. The rules are simple. One person hides, the rest of us seek. And remember, no matter what happens, keep your flashlight on," the girl whimpered. "I really don't want to do this." David's tone softened slightly. "Don't worry, it's just a game. We'll be fine." From my hiding spot, I watched them nervously glance around, the eerie silence of the house pressing in on all of us. Their flashlights cast strange, wavering shadows on the walls, making the atmosphere even more unnerving. My candle flickered, the flame casting a faint, warm glow in the cramped space of the wardrobe. Minutes stretched into what felt like an eternity. The only sound was the faint rustle of fabric and the soft breathing of the hidden players. My mind wandered back to James's words. The candle will protect you. As long as it stays lit, you're safe. Then, suddenly, the girl's flashlight flickered and went out. She let out a small, frightened gasp. The others turned their beams toward her, illuminating her terrified face. David quickly moved to her side, trying to reassure her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us, something beyond our little game. The air grew colder and the shadows seemed to stretch longer, deeper. The sense of being trapped between the seen and unseen was overwhelming. Clutching my candle tighter, I prayed that it wouldn't go out. The flickering flame was my lifeline, my only protection against whatever might be lurking in the darkness. Hey David, what are we gonna play? Do you think we'll see a ghost? The tall, burly guy sounded excited. I couldn't help but chuckle quietly to myself. Here was another group eager to see ghosts. With so many people packed into this abandoned house tonight, I doubted any ghost would bother showing up. But this also left us with a problem. How long were we supposed to stay hidden? And what if they started playing the same candle game as us? That would be incredibly awkward. Just as I thought that, David pulled out 4 candles and handed them to his friends. My heart sank. Everyone, turn off your flashlights and light your candles. They complied without a word, and the house was soon illuminated by 4 small flames. David continued, "Have you guys heard of the Hyakumonogatari Kaidankai?" The bookish guy responded, "Oh, isn't that the Japanese tradition where people gather to tell ghost stories by candlelight?" Exactly. It's a traditional Japanese ghost story gathering. The legend goes that you light 100 candles at night, and after each story, you blow out 1 candle. When all the candles are extinguished, that's when the spirits appear. David's raspy voice made the story even more chilling in the dead of night. I imagined what would happen if they discovered we were already here. The thought of them getting scared and running away was amusing, but James's warning echoed in my mind, so we all remained perfectly hidden, keeping up our game of silence. The girl looked ready to give up. "This sounds terrifying. Can I sit out?" The tall guy laughed. "Sure, but you're buying the soy milk for our midnight snack." The bookish guy asked David, "There are only 4 of us and 4 candles. How are we supposed to play Hyakumonogatari?" David smiled. "Relax, we're just setting the mood. We're not professionals, and actually summoning spirits might not be the best idea. So we'll play a mini version, just to get a feel for it, and wrap up our courage test for the night." Huddled in my hiding spot, I watched their candlelight flicker. Each little flame seemed to dance with a life of its own, casting long, eerie shadows. The atmosphere was thick with tension and anticipation. We were hiding, barely breathing, while they prepared to tell ghost stories, oblivious to our presence. The girl sighed and lit her candle, reluctantly joining the others. They sat in a circle, the candles in the center, their faces lit by the soft, wavering glow. The scene was both eerie and mesmerizing. My heart pounded as I wondered if our own game would intersect with theirs. David laughed. "Oh, it's just for the atmosphere. None of us are professionals, and if we really summoned a ghost, that wouldn't be good. So let's do a mini version of the experience just to get a taste of it and wrap up today's test of courage event perfectly." Understanding their plan, I felt a wave of relief. At least they wouldn't be rummaging through the abandoned house, which meant I could stay hidden and listen to their ghost stories until they left. I figured the others were probably thinking the same thing. The tall, burly guy spoke first. "I'll go first. Just a heads up, this is a really scary ghost story. Mary, if you get scared, you can hug me." "No way. Who wants to hug you?" Mary stuck out her tongue in disdain. "All right, here goes." The burly guy cleared his throat. "This is a true story that happened in a remote mountain village. In the mountains of Taitung, there lived an old lady. After her husband passed away, she lived alone, cooking her own meals, leading a simple life. One day, after making porridge for lunch, she suddenly felt unwell and fell ill, was bedridden for 3 days and nights, shivering with a mysterious cold. When she finally recovered, the first thing she did was drink that bowl of porridge. Afterward, she felt younger than before. He spoke in a spooky, exaggerated tone. The bookish guy asked, "What happened next?" The burly guy laughed. "That's it. Pretty scary ghost story, huh?" Mary protested. "What? Where's the scary part?" "The porridge she drank was from 3 days ago." "Isn't that terrifying? Totally disgusting?" The burly guy laughed, ignoring the groans and eye rolls from the others. He triumphantly blew out his candle, making the room even darker with only 3 candles remaining. "Oh, my turn." The bookish guy adjusted his glasses, clearly prepared. This is a classic ghost story, so you might have heard it before. There was a couple deeply in love, but the guy fell for another girl and started dating both at the same time. When his original girlfriend found out, he chose to break up with her. Devastated, she jumped to her death and left a note saying she would return as a vengeful spirit to haunt him. His voice was calm, but carried a chilling undertone. The flickering candlelight made the shadows dance eerily on the walls, enhancing the spooky atmosphere. The girl Mary seemed genuinely unsettled, clutching her candle tighter. The guy didn't take the threat seriously. The bookish guy continued. He moved on, started dating the other girl openly, but strange things began to happen. He would see his ex-girlfriend's reflection in mirrors, hear her voice calling his name at night, feel her cold presence next to him while he slept. It drove him to the brink of madness. David leaned in, captivated. What did he do? He tried to seek help, but nothing worked. One night, he woke up to find his new girlfriend missing. Frantic, he searched everywhere but found no trace of her. Then he saw her standing on the balcony, eyes vacant. As he approached, she turned to him and whispered, "He's here." Before he could react, she jumped, just like his ex. The room fell into a heavy silence. The shadows seemed to press closer, the air thick with tension. Mary's voice trembled as she said, I really don't want to play anymore." David gave her a reassuring smile. "It's just a story, Mary. We're almost done. Let's finish this." Mary hesitated but nodded, her hand shaking as she held her candle. I watched, my heart pounding. The room felt colder, the darkness more oppressive. Every creak and whisper seemed magnified, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. We were all here for a thrill, but this eerie game was beginning to feel all too real. The boundary between fun and fear was blurring, and the anticipation of something lurking just beyond our sight was almost unbearable. The bookish guy continued upon learning this. The boyfriend was terrified. He asked his friends to find a monk for help. The monk told him that his girlfriend's resentment was too strong to dispel. On the 7th night after her death, she would return to seek him out, but if he could survive that night, he would be safe. Because a corpse becomes stiff after death, she wouldn't be able to bend down. So the monk advised him to hide under the bed, where she wouldn't be able to reach him. If he could endure until dawn, he would be saved. Following the monk's advice, the boyfriend hid under his bed as soon as the sun set on the 7th night. Late that night, the wind blew his door open, and he heard the thudding footsteps in his room. To his horror, he heard his deceased girlfriend's voice softly chanting, "Can't find you, can't find you, can't find you." He was petrified, not daring to make a sound. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped. He opened his eyes and looked out from under the bed. There she was, with her head pressed to the floor, blood streaming down her face, staring directly at him with wide, unblinking eyes. She whispered, "Found you." The next day, the boyfriend was discovered asleep under the bed, unharmed. The monk couldn't understand why his method had failed until he realized that the girlfriend had landed head first. So when she came back for revenge, she hopped all the way on her head. "Oh, that's terrifying," Mary said, covering her face. The burly guy scoffed. "I've heard that one before. It's an old story. I heard it in elementary school." I had to stifle a laugh, imagining how Michael must be trembling under the bed after hearing that story. The bookish guy shrugged and blew out his candle, leaving only 2 candles lighting the room. David turned to Mary. "Your turn, Mary." "Okay." Mary adjusted her position and cleared her throat. "This ghost story is something I saw on TV and I found it pretty scary. It's about a 5-year-old girl. Her family threw her a birthday party, inviting friends and relatives. Everyone was having a great time and the little girl was especially happy, jumping and shouting with joy. Suddenly, in the midst of the celebration, the girl's face went pale. She collapsed to the floor with a thud, convulsing. Despite being rushed to the hospital, she didn't survive. The cause of death was unknown. At her funeral, her family played a video from her birthday party to remember her. As they watched, they noticed something chilling. The girl wasn't jumping for joy on her own. There was a pale hand gripping her hair, jerking her up and down. At first, the girl found it fun and laughed, but the hand kept pulling harder and harder. The bookish guy shivered. "I've never heard that one before. It's really creepy." The burly guy scoffed again. "It's okay, I guess. I'd give it a 60. So far, mine is still the scariest." David gave Mary an encouraging nod. "Not bad, Mary. Now, let's finish this up." Mary, visibly shaken, managed a weak smile. "Thanks. Who's next?" David took a deep breath. "I guess it's my turn to wrap things up." He began his tale, the flickering candlelight casting long, haunting shadows around the room. His voice was low, almost a whisper, drawing us all into the darkness of his story. This is a story about a haunted house, much like the one we're in now. A group of friends decided to test their courage by spending the night in it. As they told ghost stories, strange things began to happen. They heard footsteps, saw shadows moving, and felt a chilling presence among them. One by one, they started to disappear. His voice was hypnotic, drawing us deeper into the narrative. The candles flickered, casting long, twisted shadows. My breath caught as I listened, the fear almost tangible. The game was no longer just a game. It was a test of our nerve, our ability to confront the unknown. And as David's story unfolded, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were no longer alone. "Your story was terrible. So lame." Mary laughed and teased. She blew out her candle, leaving only one flickering flame in the room. The group fell silent, waiting for David's grand finale. He stood with his back to me, pausing for about 5 seconds. As I glanced at my own candle, I realized with a shock that it was still burning at the same length as when they arrived. I had already listened to 3 ghost stories. How could the candle remain unchanged? A sense of dread crept over me. "Something was very wrong," David began. "Do you know the ghost story about this very house, the Zhongli haunted house, where we're sitting right now?" The bookish guy replied. Wasn't there a fire here or something?" "Exactly," David continued. "About 10 years ago, 4 high school students came here at night, just like us. They wanted to see ghosts, so they played hide and seek in the middle of the night. Hearing this, combined with the mystery of the undiminished candle in my hand, sent my mind reeling. My thoughts were a jumbled mess, and an ominous idea began to form. The burly guy questioned, "How does playing hide and seek make you see ghosts?" They each held a candle and hid in the dark, abandoned house. Since no one was designated as it, the real ghost would come out to play with them. The candles were supposed to protect them. As long as they didn't blow them out, the ghost wouldn't be able to find them, David explained. The bookish guy nodded. "Oh, I get it now." David continued. During their game, one of them accidentally knocked over a candle. The house, filled with old wooden furniture, caught fire quickly. The thick black smoke overwhelmed them, and all 4 of them perished in the blaze. Because the house was so isolated and had been abandoned for so long, no one noticed the fire. They had all snuck out that night, so their families had no idea where they were. The police eventually closed the case as a missing persons incident, never discovering that they had died in the fire. There were no prayers, no rites to guide their spirits. They didn't even realize they were dead, their candles never extinguished, forever burning at the same length they were when the fire started. Ghosts in the living world don't breathe. They can't blow out the candles to end the game. So they are doomed to play hide and seek endlessly. My heart pounded as the horrifying realization set in. The candle in my hand, still burning steadily, suddenly felt heavy with the weight of this new understanding. Could we be the ones who never left? As David's story sank in, the atmosphere grew even more suffocating. The single candle's light seemed weaker, struggling against the oppressive darkness. The air turned colder, and every small noise, the creak of the floor, the rustle of the wind. The burly guy, now visibly uneasy, tried to laugh it off. "That's just a story, right?" But the tension in the room was palpable. David turned slowly, and his eyes met mine through the small hole in the wardrobe. His expression was unreadable, a mix of curiosity and something darker. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Our candles had not shortened, because we were part of the same unending game. We had become ghosts, forever playing hide and seek in this forsaken house. The thought was paralyzing. My hand trembled, nearly extinguishing the flame. I clutched so desperately. In the oppressive silence, the gravity of our situation became clear. We were trapped in this nightmarish cycle, bound by the rules of a game that no living person should ever play. And as the last candle flickered, the shadows seemed to close in, and I felt an overwhelming urge to scream, to break free from this eternal night. But all I could do was hold on to my candle, the thin barrier between me and an endless darkness. Hearing this, my body was drenched in cold sweat. I couldn't find a rational explanation for everything I was witnessing. "That's really scary," the burly guy said. The bookish guy and Mary huddled together, nodding in agreement. "That's why the most famous legend about the Zhongli haunted house is the never-ending game of ghostly hide-and-seek," David added. He blew out the last candle, marking the end of their Hayaka Monogatari. But instead of darkness, the room was suddenly illuminated by 3 more candle flames and a chorus of screams. David, the bookish guy, the burly guy, and Mary all screamed in terror as they saw 3 figures holding white candles appear behind them. Under the flickering candlelight, the 3 figures looked horrifying. Their skin was either charred black or covered in blisters and red patches. Their bodies were shriveled and mummified, unrecognizable from their pre-burnt selves. But I knew who they were: James, Michael, and Robert.
Can't blow out. Can't blow out.
Can't blow
Can't
out.
blow out.
Can't blow out.
Can't blow out.
Can't blow out.
Can't blow out, echoed their mournful voices throughout the house. David and his friends clung to each other, shaking uncontrollably, crying and screaming, their faces smeared with tears and snot. They were undoubtedly regretting their decision to play this dangerous ghost summoning game. Can't blow out.
Can't blow out.
Can't blow out. Can't blow out.
Can't blow out.
Can't blow out.
Can't blow
Can't
out.
blow out.
Can't blow out.
Can't blow out. James beckoned to me with his burnt, decayed left hand. I understood what he meant. He was asking me to come out. Maybe after tonight, we wouldn't need to hide anymore. I looked at the candle in my hand, still burning at the same length as when we started. Just as David had said, we were dead. In the afterlife, we had no breath, no air to blow out the candles. Maybe we could ask them to blow out the candles for us. But what would happen if the candles were extinguished? Can't blow out, can't blow out, I can't blow out. I repeated, but before stepping out of the wardrobe, I tried blowing on the candle one last time, wanting to feel the reality of my death, even though everything still felt so unreal. The candle went out. In the darkness, a raspy voice laughed menacingly. "Got you."